Cure. Thanks for coming on the show today.
No, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I was looking at your book just before we came over, and I noticed that you self-published and you called it Nutrition with Judy Publishing. That was brilliant. Like everybody always asks me, because I've been a very successful author, how do you get in? What's the best way? I'm like, self-published. So you did it, and it's a beautiful book. So good job.
Thank you. I think the publishing company you've worked with before, they actually reached out to me and I talked to them about the book and they wanted to split it up. And I just came to a hard decision that I kind of wanted to have it as my own baby because I worked so hard on it. And so at least for the first book, I just thought, I think it made more sense to self-publish. It's definitely harder.
Well, the autonomy of the information is the big reason to self-publish.
Yeah.
When you go to a publisher, you're kind of at the mercy of editors and like trends of, oh, you can't say this, but you can say that. And it's like, it's not really you. I've been very fortunate in my writing career that most of what I publish has been pretty much what I wanted to put in there.
That's awesome.
So I guess I earned that after a while. But when it's your first book, kudos. Like I tell people, make your first book self-published. I'm going to go ahead and get started, by the way.
Oh, okay.
That is Judy Cho, you guys. She is Nutrition with Judy over on Instagram. Go check her out. Flourishing community over there. Nutritional therapy practitioner and holistic health, looking at clients to help get to the root cause and produce healing. I love it. You are an author, which we were just talking about, of the Carnivore Cure. And I love the imagery of the steaks coming out of the bottle. That was really creative. That's the first thing that caught my attention when I saw your book. So welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I mean, I've told you offline, but I'm the biggest fan. You introduced me to keto. I, did not believe in a high fat, low carb diet. And then I stumbled upon your book and you opened my eyes. And so I'm forever grateful to Keto Clarity. Such an amazing read. Whenever I recommend books, that's probably one of the first books I recommend in all my resource guides. I might just have one or two books and your book is always there. So thank you. And it's an honor to be here.
That is so cool. And now here you are, an author, and maybe Carnivore Cure becomes the impetus for inspiring someone else on their own health journey.
You.
That's the fun part of being an author.
No, it's definitely been a journey. I've always liked writing, and I think I express myself best in writing and visuals. And, it's just, I kept getting asked the same questions, and, all these little snippets of information wasn't a kind of holistic point of view. So I just thought, I should just write my own book and just get all my thoughts in one place. So then it's not just, oh, where do I stand with this? Where do I stand with this? But it's just a comprehensive guide for a meat-based diet and why it can actually make sense for people, especially if you're doing it from an elimination diet perspective.
Oh, for sure. And we definitely will get into that here in just a moment, the whole gut health connection, AIP and all that. But like Sean Baker and Paul Saladino have kind of established themselves as the big boys in the community of carnivore.
Yes.
But I love kind of the outer edges and you're one of those. Because there's more nuance than just, eat steak and that's all you eat, ribeye steaks all day, which you did show just as of yesterday as the recording. You showed a picture of your portion of ribeye, which was the more fatty, your husband's portion, which tended to be a little more of the more protein, and then your kids kind of all chopped up little small pieces. That was really cute. I love that. And then all the comments, that's one ribeye you split amongst your whole family. No, guys, it's 3 steaks. We all eat our own steaks.
I was surprised that I would never think that was even a question. So I didn't even put that in my first caption. And then I kept getting that question of, oh no, I must be doing this wrong. I'm personally eating it all by myself. So, and then I realized that this is how kind of misinformation can spread. And so I clarified, I made sure that, hey, no, I am not a fan of under eating or, sharing a 16-ounce ribeye by 4 people. That's 4 ounces is never going to be sufficient amount of protein.
No. Well, I know in his heyday of doing the ribeyes, Sean Baker would brag about having like 3-4 pounds of ribeyes in a day. Oh crap! Like I can get a pound and a half down in a day, but that's a lot of meat. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree. And that's sort of why I came up with this, just working with clients, my own journey of personalized carnivore. So I used to, when I first, so I went from keto and I was keto for about a year, and I just noticed that the allotment of carbohydrates would kind of get me down my spiral of the whole eating disorder. So struggled with bulimia, binge eating, and all those different kind of nuances in the disordered eating space for over a decade. And so while keto healed a lot of it and started nourishing my body with the proper fats, I would still kind of fall. And so that's why I just fell into carnivore, like, hey, maybe if I just consider carbs, sugar as a non-food, then maybe I'll thrive. And it actually worked out for me. So then I just, who do I look to know what's right? And so there were like individuals out there that would say, hey, just eat all the meat you can, just drink water, no supplements, no this, no that, no fasting, and all these rules. And they were very rigid. And so I started following suit. And for some reason, within 4 months, it just wasn't working for me. So my energy was draining. I tried to force down 2 pounds of meat in one sitting, and I would get really tired and exhausted, and my blood sugar was rising into like 140. So definitely over diabetic numbers. And so I knew something was wrong. And then, um, and then I think I just started having self-doubt of, well, I know the research says maybe those numbers aren't ideal, but hey, these people have said they've done it forever. Some of the higher influencers are saying that that's okay too. And so maybe it's me, right? So then you start kind of self-introspecting of like, maybe it's my fault, maybe I'm doing it wrong. And so I just kept going, even though I wasn't feeling well. I slowly started gaining some weight. But then as I finished nutritional therapy school and then I started seeing clients, I started seeing the trend. So everybody was eating a pound and a half. Most of my clients are women. Most of them have metabolic disease and some hormonal issues. And time again, they come to me like, I'm losing sleep, I'm losing my hair, I'm eating about 2 pounds of meat. I stopped all my supplements. And then I realized, you know what, this isn't working. Like maybe for me, I couldn't fight for myself, but the fact that I'm working with all these clients that are just meat based and they're saying, whatever the dogma or mantra is in the carnivore space is not working, I just realized, you know what? I don't think just this one eat 2 pounds of meat or 3 pounds or just beef is the answer for everyone, because I've now worked with so many different carnivores that run the gamut. So some people eat nose to tail, some people eat all the kind of organs, and some people eat just grass fed, and they're still not thriving, and they required some gut healing or they required some nutrients or supplements, and that's how they found the healing. And they changed their macros where they were maybe eating a pound of meat a day, twice a day, or a pound of meat split into 2 meals with higher fat. And that's when they started thriving. And so I finally started saying, you know what? I don't think carnivore is this silver bullet that heals everybody. I think it's, if you find the version that works for you, then it can. But you may need supplements, you may need something, right? If you are metabolically damaged, then just meat alone may not work, especially if your gut is damaged. Yeah.
Man, you are hitting on so many things that I think are like so key here. And I've been around in the various communities. I started with the Atkins diet back in 2004. And then kind of was in the low carb world, and along came Mark Sisson's Primal, and then Paleo and Rob Wolf and all those guys were out there, and then they kind of had their little rise and fall. Then keto came and it had a rise and it's on the decline. Now carnivore is kind of on the rise, and I'd say slightly on the decline. It seems the demise of all of these trends, Judy, comes down to the simplicity of customizing the diet to the individual is thrown out the window in favor of that dogma you were talking about. And it's so horrible. Like when Paul Saladino brought up the whole honey thing, I was like, oh, hell, I know what's coming next. Like it was a big deal. And it's like, okay, but maybe some people do okay with that. But maybe some people do a whole lot not okay with that. We need to recognize that both exist simultaneously.
Yeah, and so I've actually talked to him in person, and so I think I get his point of view more. His goal is really to, I guess in his words, he was saying he wants people to reach for the moon. And I said, well, if they just end up in the stars, then it's okay, right? So and I think he understands that basically if you have metabolic disease, you shouldn't be consuming honey, but maybe it just gets lost in, again, the communication.
Yeah.
But that's what I tell my clients. So it's interesting. So when clients meet with me, whatever has been trending in social media, half of them start doing it. So then half of them are on supplements. So they're like, I don't take any supplements, but I take some of the organ, the desiccated organ supplements, or they have tried honey for a little bit, or they've tried Ray Peat for a little bit. And time again, it's all these kind of band-aids without seeing what works for their bio-individual body. And so I tell them, if you've struggled with metabolic disease, so if you have ever been pre-diabetic or diabetic, honey is probably not going to be your friend, right? If you've had hormonal issues, adding carbs is probably not going to be the answer. I mean, it's just a lot of times, people just get these data points and they're like, oh, let me try that, right? Let me try this, let me try that. And it often doesn't work, but then you don't hear all the people that say, hey, it didn't work for me, right? They may say in the moment, oh gosh, like, not using salt has helped me so much. And then you don't know if it's helped them for 6 months later. And just from my studies, I mean, we really need salt, right? Especially being low carb. Now, there may be nuances to that, but in general, it's just, we don't know for sure. When you don't work with individuals and for long term, you just don't see the trends. And what I have seen is that most carnivores need to heal their gut, even though they say their gut is already healed. But if you have SIBO, IBS, more of the serious gut issues, just, from the logical perspective, if you don't have enough hydrochloric acid in your stomach or the bile in your gallbladder because you've been eating a low-fat diet, how are you going to break down your meat sufficiently to give you all the nutrients and then to absorb even in the small intestine, especially if you have SIBO? So maybe you actually are doing a detriment to yourself and you need to take some supplements in the beginning to heal. And some of the dogma is you don't need supplements on this nutrient-dense diet. And the thing is, if you have any type of disease from prior, you probably actually do. And this is the kind of damage I've seen. So one of my earlier clients, she had loose stools for 6 months and she grinned and bared it for 6 months saying, no, this is normal for carnivore. I'm going to just fight through this. And she finally started working with me. And then within a month, it stopped from some of the probiotics and other supplements. So yeah, again, I think we need to really consider the bio-individual body. Some people can do great on honey, right? If you work out a lot, if you are metabolically really healthy and you're just using carnivore as a biohacking tool. But most often, the people I see in the community are a little bit older, they have metabolic disease, and they're at a point where they're like, everything has not worked for me. Standard care has not worked for me. And so now I'm going to try a diet that eliminates everything because I'm so sick and tired of feeling sick. And for those people, often the honeys, these added carbohydrates, then open a gateway to get them back to being sick. And it's just unfortunate.
Oh man, your nutritional therapy education through, I hear it like oozing out of everything you talk
Thank
about.
you.
It's wonderful. And I don't think there's a lot of NTPs in the carnivore world. So you're kind of one of the major ones out there. So thank you for infusing that. I did that with keto, where we infused nutritional therapy into keto. I wrote a book called Real Food Keto that used a lot of those principles and then applied a ketogenic diet, which would be the same thing with carnivore.
Right.
But like going back to paleo, they had this concept called safe starches. That's what they called it. Now, what they were talking about was this kind of starchy carbohydrate, like a tapioca starch or a potato starch, and it was feeding the gut microbiome. But then I pushed back, being the low carb guy, saying, well, wait a minute. When you say safe, people hear freebie. It's allowed, but it's not okay for everybody, and there will be problems. And I tried to articulate those, and there was this pushback. And so you're right. Language means everything, how you describe things. And people will hear what they want to hear, Judy.
Right.
They're always looking for the shortcut. Oh, I can have starch. Great. Let me add it into my diet. Oh, I can have honey. Great. And without having the context that if you're insulin resistant, which, oh yeah, by the way, studies show about 88% of us are on some level of insulin resistance, you have to be mindful of your own body before you do anything that you hear a guru say.
Yeah, absolutely. And, in the book, I actually have a graphic that shows that the majority makeup of honey is actually fructose. And if you think about fructose, I mean, that's what oftentimes gets a lot of us really sick, right? So if you think about how glucose can be used by the entire body, fructose is only used by the liver, and it's a direct impact on the liver. And so when you use a lot of honey and then you add maybe some high fructose corn syrup foods or foods with other rich fructose, which is all fruits, right? Then it's a inundation to your liver, and you have to wonder why people start getting non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, right? I don't think people understand all these nuances, and they just hear someone that they believe in says, hey, follow this or follow that. And it's just, everyone needs to know these kind of individuality reasons of maybe why you should or should not be eating something. But it's funny because when I went against some of the points from Ray Peat, or even just the honey, yeah, there you go. Or even when I, went against a little bit of the honey, it's funny because people called me dogmatic, and it's not that I'm dogmatic. I mean, in the book, the meat-based diet is an elimination diet. So if you really want, there's a whole section about how to soak and sprout vegetables and seeds, right? Why would I put that in if I'm super anti-plants? It's just having a lot of the information and then making your own intellectual decision as to if these foods will be good or not for you, and not just allowing somebody or something to give you the permission to now eat it.
Thank you. Like, I feel like as much as we bemoan like the dietary guidelines and how it's such a monolithic way of eating, we have become our own little dietary guidelines promoting there's a carnivore diet, there's a keto diet. There's never been a diet of any sort. It's always been, please customize it to you and make it highly individualized. Yeah. Why I love that bioindividuality teaching of the NTA is coming through really strong with you. And I believe in it very strongly myself. You kind of have to tinker and test and find what works for you.
Yeah, you absolutely do. If you don't, this is what I had a long conversation with one of the veterans. So we obviously disagree on a lot of things, right? So this person doesn't believe in fasting per se. I don't know if they necessarily believe in salt and certain things. And the thing is, if you sensationalize, I get the whole appeal, right? So, hey, eat this way and you're going to lose several hundred pounds. You're going to look beach body ready. You're going to look this way. It's this silver bullet. It's this magical diet. But the problem with that is, sure, you're going to get an influx of people for that, right? So it's like this easy diet, just eat meat. You don't have to think about anything else. The problem is that as people do it and they don't find what really works for them, whether it's the nose to tail, adding supplements, adding fasting, whatever it is, then when it doesn't work for them, they're like, nope, this diet doesn't work for me, but it works for so-and-so. And right. Then you see this cliffhanger of a drop, right? And the problem is that if people just came in with a more realistic approach of, hey, this isn't I'm going to get skinny tomorrow diet, right? This is it heals a lot, but there's work to be done. It may be different for you than it is for me. The macros may change. And while people hate that it can be complicated that way, the thing is, if people come in more realistically, then if something breaks 3 months out, they're not losing the weight, they're not sleeping through the night, they're not feeling as well, then they can say, what do I need to work on? Rather than this diet is not working, when they had the opportunity to actually finally heal insulin resistance, metabolic disease on a amazing diet, but they were just falsely advertised to that then made them leave. And that is the part that is so upsetting to me.
Yeah, well, and that's happened in every diet trend that I've already mentioned. Like every single one of them, people, they try to do the prescriptiveness of some guru. And when that doesn't work, they say, well, paleo didn't work, keto didn't work, carnivore didn't work. And it's not that it didn't work. It's that the version that you tried was not the one that was tailored just for you, which is why, again, I love your work. Are there basic foundational principles that you think anybody starting on a carnivore diet should be paying attention to?
Yes. So I definitely think everyone should eat more of the real food. So, less deli meat, sausages, but unless you get, the sausage from your butcher and they grind it up in front of you kind of thing. But, I'm not obviously eating grass finished, pasture. All of those are really ideal. But in the beginning, just don't worry about it. In terms of nutrition, it has been shown that whether you grass finished or grain finished, they all have similar nutrients. So don't worry about all these nuances. Eat the meat that you enjoy. Try to listen to your satiety. Now, I do think that people should at least eat about 0.8 grams to 1 pound of ideal weight, or at least 1 gram to 1 pound of ideal weight. And again, this is very individual. So you don't want to eat too little meat so that you can maintain your lean body mass. This is how you are healthy long term. So like if you think about the elderly that fall and break their hip, it's because they don't have enough muscle mass. So you don't want to get that way. But then you want to eat enough fat. So if you are not eating carbohydrates, which is an energy source, then you don't want your meat to be having to go through gluconeogenesis through protein to get that energy, because that's a very inefficient process. It requires a lot of work within. And so you want to get a lot of the energy from fat. And so I am a big proponent of eating like 75-80% of total calories from fat. So like a ketogenic macros version of carnivore. And I've seen that to improve most people. When I see people eat mostly meat and then they don't eat a lot of the fat, I notice that they start waking up in the middle of the night often, because I think their cortisol is having a spike in the middle of the night because their blood sugar is getting really imbalanced. They start to lose their hair and just a bunch of other issues. And when they start dialing up the fat and then just eating a sufficient amount of protein, so it normally is about, again, 0.8 grams to 1 pound of ideal weight, then they start kind of sleeping through the night. They, start feeling better. I do think that you should eat a variety on a carnivore diet. So I don't think you should just eat beef. For example, thiamine is the richest in pork. So if you were to just eat beef, even if you ate beef liver, ribeyes and muscle meats and all the beef related foods, and then even with chicken, you may get to, and you're eating about 2 pounds, you may get to 40% of the daily value you need for thiamine. Whereas if you eat pork and you have 9 grams of pork belly, 9 ounces of pork belly, you will hit your 100% daily value of thiamine. And you need thiamine to balance your minerals. You need it for protein synthesis. So you need it for a lot of things. And I wonder, people that are eating nose to tail or beef only, are they a little deficient in thiamine?
Interesting. Yeah. By the way, pork belly, that's my favorite by far, better than ribeye. I know that's sacrilege, but I love pork belly. And your macros, by the way, the 75 to 80%, it's very naturally found in these fattier cuts. And so a ribeye is right at that, like 75% fat. A pork belly is right at the 80%.
Yeah.
So you're getting some hardcore fat in there. I guess filet mignon and sirloin can be a little leaner, so you kind of have to like pick and choose the ones, and or I guess add exogenous sources of fat in terms of butter or lard, bacon grease, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so you can use tallow, suet. You can eat bone marrow, which is 90% fat. So there are a lot of fat sources, but not everyone can do dairy on a carnivore diet. So the people that are, very kind of immunocompromised, they seem to have a reaction to it. So as you heal the gut, I think you can eventually incorporate dairy. If you could get raw dairy, that's even better. For me, I use a lot of butter. So if I eat like chicken wings, I don't want to really put suet or tallow on it. So I make it really easy for myself. So I just get some grass-fed butter, and I probably need to add like 4 tablespoons of butter, which to some people might seem like a lot, but instead of ranch, I'm using like melted butter or like, soft butter. So that is honestly how I have felt so much better. So now I do 2 meals a day, about pound to a pound and a half a day, and I add a lot of extra fat. And I feel great like I used to on keto when my, ketones were much higher and my blood sugar was lower. And so when I first started carnivore and was eating the 2 pounds, my blood sugar every morning was above 100. And now my blood sugar is in the 80s. And so I definitely notice a difference. And so this is where, I recommend people, instead of just, I'm going to eat all the meat, that's what this, diet says, is no, there are little specifics. Don't eat just beef. I get it. There are people that say they have survived for decades off just beef, but from a nutritional perspective, you're probably doing your body a disservice by not eating the egg yolks, the grass-fed butters, the fatty fish, right? So if you know NTA, they're huge on essential fatty acids, right? It's how our skin is hydrated. It's how our muscles are strong. And most people on a carnivore diet are essential fatty acid deficient because they're not eating fish, because you're not craving fish anymore, right? So I recommend my clients and the people in the community to at least eat 4 servings of fish a day. And again, this gets into the dogma because a lot of people are like, well, fish is so polluted. There's so much mercury. The seas are so bad. So, why would I eat fish? There's more toxins than benefits. But the argument also then will go to, our salt is from the sea and it's not cleaned. So, I mean, the argument for if the fish is toxic or the salt, it's kind of similar. So again, don't worry about these nuances. I have clients that do hair tissue mineral tests. I don't see the heavy metal buildup in their hair. I don't see the toxins. So until I see that as a commonality, I don't worry about the fish. I think we should all be eating fatty salmon, sardines, herring, all these, and cod liver. All of these are so nutrient rich, and it's really bad if we don't get the omega-3s, DHA, EPA, and from the ALA. So yeah.
Well, I suppose you could take some chelation like EDTA to remove any potential heavy.
Oh, that's true too.
You could do that if you wanted to, but yeah, you said 4 servings of fish a day. Did you mean a week?
I'm sorry, a week. Yes, a week.
I knew you
Thank
meant
you.
a week, but I'm going to be like, people are going to write me, wow, she wants me to eat 4 servings of fish a day plus 2 pounds of meat a day. Oh my God. Like,
I know, no, you're right. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't even catch that I said that. Yes, 4 times a week. That's ideal. Yes.
I knew what you meant, Judy, but I thought, okay, for the people watching and listening, I thought I would clarify. So
Thank you. Thank you.
So let's move to people who have some gut health issues, because this is kind of, you branded yourself as Judy Cho Gut Health, like you're a nutritionist that really helps people heal their gut. What's a sign that the gut's out of whack, that they need to be healed?
Sure. So it's really any response from the digestive system after you eat. So one, if you feel better just not eating, that can be a huge indication. If you have if you have gas, if you have flatulence, loose stools, and loose stools is tricky. You might have loose stools at the very beginning of a carnivore transition, so that may be different, but all of these other things, bloat, gas, flatulence, all of those should not be present in a normal working digestive process. A lot of that is either, bloat can be related to SIBO, so there's a bacterial overgrowth in your small intestine. The burping can be the fact that either your stomach is not removing the food fast enough because you might not have enough of this hydrochloric acid in your stomach, and you may not be digesting your food as well, right? So there's a bunch of reasons, but symptoms wise, it's just if you have any digestive discomfort, it's oftentimes that you need gut support. The reason why I focus on gut support specifically is that I just found, so when I first started carnivore again, I didn't use any of the hydrochloric acid. I didn't use any of the digestive enzymes because again, I thought, hey, just meat only heals everything. And then I noticed that I was just not digesting. I didn't eat meat for 12 years. And so I think it was kind of foolish of me for not thinking that I may need a little extra support.
Right.
And so I started taking some hydrochloric acid. I took some digestive enzymes, some bile, and a lot of it went away. I also took probiotics for my small intestine. And so now I don't take anything, but it required me to take a little bit in the beginning to get here. And now I have no kind of digestive issues. If you think about it, if our gut is damaged, again, so as an example, meat, we need to eat meat so that we can produce zinc, and zinc is what helps us to produce hydrochloric acid in our stomach. So if we don't have enough hydrochloric acid, how will we fully properly break down our meats to then even get the zinc? And then on top of that, if your small intestine is leaky or has leaky gut or any of those things, which oftentimes people come to carnivore for these issues, then how are you going to absorb the nutrients that are primarily absorbed in the small intestine? If you have any type of seasonal allergies, you have lots of like skin issues like eczema, psoriasis, or any immune allergy issues, it's likely related to a small intestine dysbiosis. So again, with all of these, how would just meat be able to heal all of that, right? So that's where I think if we focus on gut healing, we're so close to kind of optimal health by eating a meat-based elimination diet where you remove most of your toxins, then we can really heal and feel fully better. And so that's why I focus primarily on gut health.
Yeah, I was so shocked when I found out that 9 out of 10 people don't have enough stomach acid. Everybody kind of feels that burn in their throat and they think that means they have too much stomach acid. Yeah. Very few people have too much stomach acid. It's just the opposite. And so that zinc is so important. And so, and ironically, it's also a big part of like this virus that, you know, when they're treating people with the virus, they're injecting them with lots of zinc and vitamin C and vitamin D. Like all of these things are very good therapeutics. And so that's very interesting, right? And it's probably a sign they're not eating enough of those nutrients that you're prescribing here.
Right, right. So if you don't have enough hydrochloric acid, even, you know, any of the kind of bacteria from your foods, it can't get killed off. So then you can then affect your, you know, small intestine and your large intestine, and things just don't get broken down. So if you think about it, your stomach is kind of where things get broken down to the smallest pieces. It's acidic where a lot of the, you know, the bacteria, so that's how H. pylori gets, you know, rampant in your stomach. And if you kill all of those, and if things are working properly, then your digestive process should just kind of cascade down, and then you have a normal bowel movement. And so one of the beauties of the carnivore diet is it removes a lot of the trigger foods that can inflame the gut, whether it's in your stomach, it's, you know, it's just causing issues, or in the small intestine where it can cause more permeability. A lot of these foods are in the anti-nutrients in plants. And so when you eat a meat-based diet, you're basically offending the gut less so it can heal, and then add to that some gut healing support, and then you're really on your way to better healing, right? So if you think about how we fuel our body with foods, and so it's what we absorb is what is really going to give us health. It's not just what we eat. I think people have this perception that, hey, if I eat nose to tail, or if I eat every nutrient in my chronometer to make it match, I'm settled, right? But the reality is that most people are not probably absorbing all those nutrients. And then secondly, since most of our immunity is in our small intestine, the best way to have a stronger body is by having less insult to the small intestine. And when you remove a lot of the plant foods, you can have the small intestine heal. And that's why a lot of people in the carnivore space say, hey, I haven't got a cold in a year or so, because I think as they are removing a lot of the kind of the trigger foods, then they are now healing, and their small intestine gets stronger, and so their immune health in turn gets stronger as well. And so this is where gut health is so important. And it's unfortunate that there are people out there that even on a carnivore diet, they will just bear through a lot of the gut issues because they were told that this is the way to do it, when unfortunately it's not, right? After a month, and if you're still struggling gut wise, it's probably because you need to get on a protocol.
Thank you for being a voice of sanity, because sometimes I'll see things and I'm just like, it's not that simple. Like, I appreciate trying to make things simple and understandable, but sometimes things are more complex.
Yes.
I need to be honest with people and like tell them, hey, if you start running into X, then you do Y, at least to try to heal whatever is causing X. And it's just, I feel like a lot of people flail on their own, which is why I love people like you out there that speak truth and say, hey, if you got issues, there might be something else going on, and here's what it might be. It's why your work is growing. It's why I love your work, and
thank you.
I'm inspired by what you do, and I'm glad that you wrote this book.
Thank you. Yeah, so in that book, I mean, the first whole, or I guess the second whole chapter talks about elimination diets, and you know why a gut healing elimination diet is so important. All of these elimination diets that basically, if you have an illness that you can't heal from, you know, whether it's AIP, Whole30, GAPS, so the gut and psychology syndrome, even the FODMAP, which, you know, clinicians use to heal the gut, all of them reduce some types of vegetables and fruits, but none of them remove meats. And so why is that, right? So most people are not sensitive to meats. Now, maybe certain kinds, but in general, like the ruminant meats, most people can tolerate it. And so that's why I came up with the elimination diet from a carnivore perspective, because what if we just removed all plants? And if you choose to add them back, then so be it. But at least you get a chance at trying what can be an all healing diet. And then, you could work on really healing. And if things aren't working, then you can try different levers to see what truly works for you and you alone. Right. So yeah, I think it's the book has been really successful. I think people are really seeing that personalized carnivore is what maybe makes sense. Gut healing is becoming, more commonly spoken about in the community. So I'm really glad for that. But I think there's still work to be done. There's obviously so many different voices in the community, and it's sad because we should really be unified so that the message is stronger and that people would want to heal. But maybe chaos turns to profit. I don't know, but it's.
Controversy sells. And again, I've been one of the leaders in the keto space, and it's been so upsetting to me to see something where so many of us started this community, started writing books and being, outspoken with good intentions of educating people and helping people. And then in come the sharks that try to make a buck off of the trend. And the same thing's happening in carnivore.
Yeah.
We're seeing it happen more and more. To me, that's kind of the disgustingness. And maybe you guys watching or listening to this, if you see someone buy my $39.99 a month program to heal with carnivore and change your life and get buff, run fast, because they're not in it to help you.
Yeah, no, it's funny because, January is World Carnivore Month. So there's a lot of programs going on in the carnivore space where it's like, join my group, join this group. And it's good. I guess in one aspect, it's, they're providing a lot of support for the communities. But another, it's just, there's, but are you also trying to make a quick dollar? I don't know. I mean, so, and normally I'm really active during World Carnivore Month, but because I saw all of that, it just kind of, and maybe this is judgy of me, but I got a little, disillusioned. And so I've actually taken a little bit of a step back. So I don't even post every day. I just am like, yeah. So I just hope that the book will bring truth.
You post is beautiful. I love the little graphics you make.
Oh, thank you.
They're really nice. So simple way of eating, weight loss, heart health. So one of the parts of your book that I thought was most intriguing was chapter 11, where you talked about the nutritional concerns on a carnivore diet. And this is always comes up. I've been around for as long as the Atkins diet was popular, and they used to always say, well, you're going to have these deficiencies because it's meat-based diet, it's all that protein. They didn't really put a lot of vilification on the fat back then. It was always the protein, that high protein diet, and you can't truly get healthy that way. Talk about a little bit of why you wrote that section.
Yeah, so there were always some fear-based questions that would always come up. So one was cholesterol, and then one was vitamin C, one was fiber. So, I mean, I can touch on fiber really quickly. So, we think of plants, rich fibrous plants that will then give us the so then the body will convert it to short-chain fatty acids for butyrate, acetate, and other types of short-chain fatty acids for gut health. That is a true statement in the sense that it'll fuel your large colon and the small intestine. The thing is, again, if you have any gut issues, one, you're assuming that the fiber will get converted to short chain fatty acids, right? But more than that, the word butyrate is also derived from the same word that butter is derived from in the Latin word butyrate, right? So, or butyrum. And there was a study done where it was shown that butter is the most nutrient dense version of butyrate, which is the bioavailable version that your body can absorb of the gut healing butyrate, right? So again, it's this misinformation of how did we come to think that fiber is the good source of butyrate when butter is the highest form of butyrate that you can get, and that is the most bioavailable form. Go ahead.
Same reason why people think they get potassium from bananas.
Oh, okay.
They get potassium, in fact, double the potassium in, say, an avocado. Is there any good meat source of potassium?
So all meats have a little bit of potassium. I don't know which ones. I don't think I made a table actually for potassium, because the reason why is because most times if you are drinking like Soleil water and you have the minerals balance of sodium with like magnesium, oftentimes the potassium gets balanced. It's usually rare that we need to supplement the potassium. And so I don't do a huge focus on that. It's interesting. I've had some people recommended to consume avocados for potassium. So you'll see people eat just meat and then they have a avocado.
Right.
And then the funny thing is, which again, this is maybe the part that they're not fully educated on, but if you add salt to potassium, you're doing an imbalance. You're almost nullifying the ratio, right? Because there's a sodium potassium pump. And if you have too much sodium in the cells, then the potassium, and it just does this natural balancing. So when you eat the avocado and then you add salt on it, you're almost nullifying the benefits of the potassium. So again, these are little nuances that I don't know if people know, but yeah, for my clients, they just typically use the Soleil water with a little bit of magnesium spray and it's sufficient. And so I don't focus on potassium because you can actually do dangerous things to your body if you overly use potassium. I mean, it's what people use for like death and stuff. So, but go ahead.
I was going to say, people don't realize there's such a yin and yang of so many processes in the body, kind of like the insulin, glucagon. Those are kind of the yin and yang, trying to keep your blood sugar highly regulated within a range. And like you said, potassium and sodium, another yin and yang. There's so many of those things. Definitely, you guys, if you're not sure kind of what your balance is, go see a nutritional therapist like Judy, because that's what you guys are good at. Like you know these yin and yang processes and can help work people through those.
Yeah. So one thing I noticed is that a lot of people in the carnivore space lately are talking about that they cannot balance their electrolytes. I think Paul Saladino even has said that the reason he's adding carbohydrates is that he can't balance his electrolytes. But I always wonder, and the reason why for, I guess, the audience is if you eat carbohydrates, you have more water retained in your body, and then you have a higher chance of retaining electrolytes. So then you may feel less of like the electrolyte flu. But the thing is, if you were to just use some Soleil water and balance your minerals naturally, instead of using all these powders and all these little like sprays and drops, I've noticed that a lot of my clients use those, and then one day of not using it, they get the headaches, their body feels immediately imbalanced. And I'm wondering if oftentimes it's because the body just can't find its natural homeostasis with all these like exogenous things. But if they use a little bit of salt, and so I get all my clients off of all of those these electrolyte supplements, and then they just start using Soleil water in the morning, maybe some in the afternoon, they just salt their meats, and then they finally start balancing themselves out, and they don't have the electrolyte issues, they don't have the leg cramps at night, and then they can eventually get off the Soleil water. Like, I don't drink Soleil water every day, but it's just, again, we're not trusting our own bodies. And so we're just using these, people say we need electrolytes, so I'm just going to use this electrolyte powder. And they never allow their bodies to balance.
Yeah, by the way, guys, Soleil, S-O-L-E, if you want to go look that up. Where do you get your Soleil water from?
So I make my own. I just created a blog post, and it talks about, the mineral wheel and how complicated it is. So I talk about how if people are just supplementing with magnesium, so orally, and then how it can actually cause imbalances in potassium and sodium. And so, it's sometimes better not to play God and just have some salt water with minerals in it, see if it kind of does the trick. But really, you just add. You could use Redmond's real salt. You can use Redmond's real salt. You can use Celtic salt. You can use Himalayan salt. And you basically just add 1 to 2 cups in a large jar of water. And then you let it fully soak and, let the minerals unbind from the salt so that they're more freely available for your body. And then in the mornings, you could just take like 1 teaspoon, don't use a metal spoon, obviously, and then put it you could put it under your tongue like that, or you could drink it slowly throughout the day of like 8 ounces and in an 8-ounce glass of water. And I have seen so much tremendous success with that in balancing electrolytes with my clients.
And it's another product of the fear that we've been made, like saturated fat, we've been made to fear that. So that's why people are afraid of animal-based fatty food. And salt is the other one, and real salt. By the way, Redmond's is my go-to. I got a big gallon tub on top of my refrigerator in there because I never want to be without that salt. I'm not a regular Soleil water guy, but I think you're convincing me to give it a go.
Well, if you feel good with salt alone, then you're probably already balanced, and that's probably why. So these are the people more that have been using the electrolyte powders and the drops, and so I have to have them transition with a little bit more minerals and salt at first.
Yes.
And then, like for me personally, I don't use Soleil water even on a weekly basis. So unless I'm sweating a lot or I'm fasting, then I probably don't need it. But in general, if you feel like your electrolytes are pretty good, you probably don't need it. For the people that are either starting a carnivore diet or have been using all these exogenous electrolytes, they probably need it in the beginning as a transition.
I do have exogenous electrolytes that I use. Well, I like to make like little gummy gelatin things, and I'll use that as the flavoring agent to get a double whammy of the collagen along with the electrolytes.
Right.
Have me second guessing myself.
Well, try it. I mean, try a week of just Soleil water and see if it changes any balances for you. Yeah. So another thing is like you brought up is the saturated fats, right? So the US guidelines has just released the next 5 years of dietary, and they only said to reduce 5 things. One of it was alcohol, one of it was added sugar. So they lowered it from like, I'm forgetting, but I think they reduced it from 13% of your total calories in a day of added sugars to now 10%. So they reduced it a little bit. And then what else? So they said no limit processed foods. And then the other big one was limit your saturated fats. And so, the question also, again, this goes back to, why are we limiting saturated fats, right? So heart disease didn't really exist over 100 years ago. And now it's the number one killer in the US. So why is that? More than ever, we are not eating as much saturated fats, but we are eating a lot more sugar. Could it be that reason, right? The other thing is we need saturated fats and cholesterol for our brain, a brain that is 60% fat. So this is the part that really gives me heartache, but our kids are recommended not to be eating fat, right? So they're eating low fat. And so they're filling these drinks that don't have fat with sugars to then have it more flavorful for the kids. But these kids, especially while their brain is growing, they need the saturated fats. Again, the brain is 60% fat. And if they don't get it from these high quality meats, then where are they going to get it from? And then we have to wonder, is this why we're getting sicker as a community? And so when you are also taking statins, for example, and it's, cholesterol reducing, if it's going to reduce everywhere in the body, you have to wonder, is it also reducing the cholesterol that's in your brain? Yeah. And then is that why there's a correlation with especially men that take statins that then have mood disorders? They are much more violent. They have depression. They're more aggressive, right? So again, all of these things. And then when you also take statins, you also reduce your CoQ10, right? So are you taking that? Did your doctor recommend that? It's just all these things are very apparent if you dig a little deeper. And so another one is vitamin C. So vitamin C, to be specific, in 1974 was 45 milligrams for the daily requirement. And in 2000, it became 90. And in the middle, there was another uptick. So it's doubled in 25 years. So are we set for another doubling? I mean, do they even know what they're necessarily doing? And then on top of that, one of the receptors for vitamin C absorption also competes with glucose. And so in the book, I kind of make the argument of, well, when you see the increase of us consuming high fructose corn syrup, we also see that's when the vitamin C also increased. So the question becomes, are we just taking more vitamin C to then compete with the glucose we're eating? People bring up the scurvy and the sailors oftentimes, but just from a basic logical perspective, half of the sailors never got scurvy and all of them are eating the same diet. So what does that exactly mean, right? So I don't think no one really knows how much vitamin C we need, but clearly people on the carnivore diet, most people are thriving and they're not eating the vitamin C requirement that's required. Obviously, in 25 years, it's doubled. So in 1970, when it was only 45 milligrams, how are we sustaining then versus in 2000s when they doubled it, right? So there's just a lot of misinformation. I go through it all in chapter 11. I talk through cholesterol, how, with if your HDL increases with LDL, there's less of a risk of cardiovascular disease. And again, I just talk about a lot of the evidence-based information. I don't talk about it from generations ago or eons ago, this and this happened, because, let's just talk about here and now. And in the here and now, there's just enough information to argue a lot of the points of views about these fears about fiber, antioxidants, vitamin C, cholesterol, and the other things I brought up.
And you also brought up something I thought was very important, which is at the heart of all chronic disease, and that's inflammation. You're looking at IGF-1, HSCRP, and one of the criticisms of a carnivore diet is, oh, that meat is inflammatory. But as you learned in your NTA training, yes, but all inflammation is not bad. There's some good inflammation out there. It's when the inflammation becomes excessive when it becomes bad. So can you kind of parse that out?
Sure. So the reason why our body inflames is so that basically it tells any part of our body can inflame. So if there's anything, it's the way that our immune system basically communicates with each other. So if you hurt your leg, for example, and you twist your ankle and then your ankle swells, that's inflammation. So your immune cells are now going to go over there and do the healing that it needs to do. You're basically in pain because your body wants you off it so that it can do its magic and heal your leg. The same thing goes with your gut, right? So if you start having stomach pain, you probably have some inflammation, and the immune system is trying to help you out, but the more you add toxic plant foods or anti-nutrients and just other foods that cause gut permeability, then it just cannot do its job. And so that's why we feel all this inflammation. So meat can cause inflammation, working out can cause inflammation, everything can cause it, but when it's in excess. So if you are highly stressed, if you think about what cortisol does, it's a kind of stress output. But if you have chronic cortisol, and cortisol can be either from excess stress in the body, or it could be from eating too much sugar. And so then you're basically the insulin can't do its job for whatever reason. And so your adrenals, your endocrine system, your hormone system now has to support it by producing more cortisol to balance your blood sugars. And when you have excess cortisol in the body, that produces chronic inflammation, and it is chronic inflammation when your body is constantly inflamed, so you don't even know where your pain's coming from. You're just achy, your body just is not the way it was when you were younger. You wake up and your body is just achy. All of these things are that your body is probably inflamed, and when it's chronic inflammation, that's when disease happens. And in my book, there's several graphics about what chronic cortisol does and how it impacts basically everything in the body. So it's not that inflammation is bad. Actually, we need to inflame to heal our body. Without inflammation, we cannot heal parts of the body that are, needing repair. But it's when we have constant inflammation that causes issues.
Man, I love flipping through your book because it's so well designed.
Thank you.
Guys, it's like the textbook I wish I had when I was in college. And some of those books you had to read for the NTA were a little bit steep as well. So I appreciate good book design and colors. It's gorgeous. Very well done. So one more thing I want to hit on before we go is chapter 18. You talk about some of the kind of lifestyle factors, things like sleep and a hormetic, the stress effect on the body that's good, too much is bad, fasting and autophagy and meditation, da-da-da. The one that stood out to me was the importance of touch and purpose. Can you expand on that? It was page 363. Guys, if nothing else, just for that, because I think this message, Judy, is so lost in our culture today. We don't appreciate each other's humanity.
Yeah, so I'm faith-based, so I'll just put it out there. And I think that, one thing I'll say in the nutrition space is that I feel like everyone tries to say, okay, I need to know this. I eat this, and then I'm going to be perfect. And the reality is there are miracles. There's this belief, right? So I always tell my clients, like, most of all, you need to believe. So the placebo effect is very real. For every new drug that comes out, the FDA requires the efficacy has to be beyond the placebo effect, meaning that if somebody believes, even if they're eating a sugar pill or a water pill or a pill that does nothing, if they believe that they are taking something that will heal them, it actually does a little bit of healing. And that is the power of our mind. There's a movie called Heal, I think, on Netflix, and it talks about how certain people were like, no, you will never walk again. And they believed it. They believed it to their core of that they can walk again. They imagined healing and they healed, right? Now, some people could say this is a little woo-woo, but the reality is we are a community-based society. We as humans cannot thrive if we don't have love and community around us. And, in the book, I talk about how there's a saying called failure to thrive with infants. So before, infants used to be in orphanages, and they noticed that infants were dying and they didn't understand why. And they realized that if you don't nurture babies enough, if you don't touch them and they feel that bond with a human, they will die. And that just shows that we really need touch, right? There are studies where I think older people, they're not as touched as much, and then they show like a decline in health and stuff. And so for me, I was in consulting. I was making a lot of money. I had, everything I wanted by the age of 30. And I used to tell God, like, hold on, I'll be back later, right? Like, let me do all the materialistic things. And I was the most depressed in my eating disorder. And I had everything I wanted, and I was not happy. There were many days that I just didn't want to live anymore. And then I had my children, I got sick, and I found my purpose again. And I realized, you know what, this is grueling sometimes. It's hard to put out information. And then when people challenge you, whether it's the vegans, the repeaters, even people in the carnivore community, sometimes I'm just like, I'm done. I want to just go back to consulting where money was much easier. But I know that I was placed here. I know I struggled with my disordered eating for so many years. I know I studied psychology to be able to talk about these psychology, like cognitive behavioral therapy and all of these things to support people, because healing is not just, I'm going to fix my food. You also have to fix your relationship with food. And so I tell people all the time in the carnivore space, it is not just, I'm going to heal my eating disorder by just eating meat, right? Or I'm going to binge off meat and then I'm going to fast for days, right? That is not healing. That's just a Band-Aid. And so we need to work on all these hard things, and we need to work on our community and sharing vulnerably with the people that do matter, and finding your purpose, because that is what's going to give us peace and happiness in this world, and the desire to live another day. This world is hard. It is hard. There's so much beauty, but you have to fight for something other than you, other than money, because none of those, and I'm sure you know, Jimmy, like it's not enough to keep you happy or wanting, purpose. It's not going to self-satisfy long term. And I just, I see people in this space, it's all about money. I mean, I get offered so many times, hey, will you promote my product? And I say no, because, well, one, it's just, I'd rather not, share, but it's just, there's just more to life than just money. Like, and I know some people could say, well, you've had it, so you don't get it. And I get it. I get that if you don't have a ton of money, then it can also affect you, but you just need to find purpose. And from my experience, money is not really true driving purpose. So
money has never driven me, Judy. It's always been people, people, people.
Yeah.
And if I'm serving people and it happens to bring money, great. Like that Keto Clarity book has done very well for me. I've made some money off of it. I ain't gonna lie.
But it's amazing.
Thank you. And it's the reason why I get up in the morning, is the people that get affected by it. And people are going to be exactly the same way with the Carnivore Cure, guys. Go check it out. Judy Cho. It's a wonderful book. I assume it's available wherever books are, Amazon, all the rest.
Yeah. So paperback is primarily only Amazon. It's interesting. So, because it's color and it's pretty thick, all the kind of conventional places that you can have the book out, so Barnes and Noble and stuff, it would have cost like $80 to have it on there. So it was just.
Trust. I know.
Okay.
do an audiobook, or is it just in paper and Kindle?
We're working on that now. It's just me. So I'm very stretched thin, but I'm trying that right now. I know I consume most of my books through audio too. So I know that especially, moms with young kids need the audiobooks, or the people that drive long distance. So I get it. So we're working on it. The reason why I didn't do it initially was because I didn't know how I would do an audiobook with so many visuals, right? So that was my struggle with it.
Pro tip, because I've done a bunch of audiobooks. Look at the appendix in the PDF that came with this audiobook. So audiobooks allow you to add little visuals that people can then access and have access to when they purchase. Audible at least does that when they purchase it from Audible. And so they'll get like a little PDF. And so as they're listening, they'll have these PDFs available that they can flip through.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So I'll have to do that. So yeah, people have been asking, and so our plan is to get it out early this year. It just, I just need to make time for it.
And you have a wonderful speaking voice. I will give you another pro tip. Take lots of breaks. So like when you speak, do it 15, 20 minutes at a time, walk away. No matter how energetic you think you are, you start to decline after that 15 to 20 minutes.
Okay.
Just put a little mark where you were, step away, come back. And, people think, oh, it's reading an audiobook. It's just reading. It's easy. Guys. I've done 6 audiobooks.
Wow.
And they're hardcore. The first time I did one, I thought it had to be so perfect. It was for cholesterol clarity way back in the day. And I was just so nervous. I've never done this before, but I know how to talk. I talk behind a microphone all the time. What's the big deal? And since then, I just talk, and then you get you a good editor to kind of clean it up and do the file. But it'll be a fun process for you.
Yeah, no, I heard that it takes like 1 to 2 days, and so I am not looking forward to the recording, and I know that it's going to be a lot of work. So I think I've been kind of delaying it too for that reason.
It's longer for a 400-page book.
Yeah,
I would plan, I don't know what you mean by days, if you mean like the whole day. I would plan a little bit longer. Just don't put up unrealistic expectations that you're going to get it done in 2 days. And you're like, dang it, I'm only a third through the book and I'm 2 days. What? Because you will flub up. You'll be sitting there reading, the obesity rate has doubled in less than 1 generation, when and you're going to like mess up because your energy will tail off. Just take your time with it. Don't put that pressure on yourself.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you. Yeah, and I'll probably reach out to you with some other questions, but thank you. That's good.
I am happy to help you anytime. Guys, again, that's Judy Cho. Go check her out on Instagram, Nutrition with Judy, and her 45,000 followers over there. And yet again, grab Carnivore Cure wherever you get books, but definitely on Amazon, and coming soon to audiobook. Well, Judy, thank you so much for being here today.
No, thank you so much for having me. This is truly an honor. I mean, I loved your book. It was really what helped me get into this nutritional space. And I mean, it gave me my life back. So I'm always forever grateful for you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll talk to you soon, Jimmy.